Welcome to the Lighthouse Sessions. I'm really excited. I have my new friend, Mara McLoughlin, with me today. Welcome to the show. Why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Thanks, Jeff. It's great to be here. So I am a speech language pathologist who started IRL Social Skills, where we empower autistic and other socially struggling teens, adults, and families with the skills to make real world connections in real life.
I love that. And where the hell were you 50 years ago? No, I'm kidding.
Barely born.
Yes. Obviously, yes. So how does one, okay, so first of all, let's back up a little. And how does one know that they have a child? Because one of my little pet peeves is people don't diagnose, or the thing that really bugs me is the stigma of diagnosing. I'm very open that I'm both autistic and ADHD and a few other things if we want to play alphabet soup. My entire childhood, I was yelled at because I was different, I was weird. And now as an adult, I'm like, yes, I was. So for those listening, how can we recognize, and how early can we recognize that our child might be neurodiverse?
Well, we can recognize that very early, even like before a year. And that is, and we can recognize that in several different ways. Autism is specifically impacts sensory processing, social interaction, and social communication. And the sensory processing part, you have a little baby that is really sensitive. Maybe they're like arching away from you because they're sensitive to touch, for example. And maybe babies, will tend to look at faces. Babies tend to love faces. And if they're not looking at your face, you might have a neurodivergent child. And early identification is great because you can get access to services. A lot of services are devoted to age, 2 to 10. Most services are devoted to the early intervention, great, school age, great, but then we get to middle school and something shifts.
Yeah.
And
I think that's, in my sons, they're in school, there's a couple of kids who've been diagnosed, and one in particular, when he gets over, he's got auditory stimulation, and it's not far between from a loud noise or a distraction to suddenly he's flipping furniture.
Yeah, poor baby.
And the poor kid gets punished because he's acting out. And it's like, well, somebody triggered him.
Yeah.
And, it was actually funny because there was a couple of kids. One liked to hum, and the other kid, whenever he heard music, had to dance.
Yeah. Now,
the problem is the kid who liked to hum had spatial issues,
right,
and the dancing kid liked to be here.
Yeah.
So every time he would hum, the dancing kid would be here dancing, and then they'd start pushing each other. And it was just like, okay, has nobody else noticed this?
Right.
And, the teachers were like, well, you can't hum and you can't dance. And it was like, or we figure out something. But
yeah, we figure out something to address the unmet needs.
Yeah.
When those kind of stims are taking place, for example, humming is activating the vagus nerve.
Yeah.
Humming is a way to self-regulate. Activating the vagus nerve gives us an overall sense of well-being. It's actually good medicine to hum. Also, moving one's body. You move your body because we are all embodied, right? You move your body. It is also self-regulating. You just notice the difference when you just do a little dance. You feel better.
Yep.
So yeah, go ahead.
And it's funny because my youngest son, he's got issues with noise, and because he had not and has not been fully officially diagnosed, the school wouldn't allow him to wear headsets. And it was like he'd come home with migraines and he'd be grouchy, and it was like, and they went, well, we need a doctor's note, we need this, and it's just, you'll adapt to the noisy kids, but the quiet kid who needs quiet, sorry kid, you're going, the one thing he needs, well, we need him paying attention. It's like he's top of the class.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not that he needs to pay attention. He needs less attention around him, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And, that's a really simple accommodation. And, I don't want to get too in the weeds on this, but, there are different kinds of ways to mitigate that sound sensitivity, what we call hyperacusis. And some people are like, oh, well, if one student has it, then like all the students have to have it. Okay, well, big deal.
That's what we got.
Have it. What if they do?
Yeah. It was just, one teacher actually said it would be too disruptive. And I was like, what now?
Yeah, no, it wouldn't. And, we've come a long way with the neurodiversity movement, and we have a long way to go.
Yeah.
Because educators typically, they get like a 3-hour in-service on autism, if that.
Yeah. And I think that's the challenge. Like, I grew up, and this is not about me, and this is not therapy for me, but I was a difficult child because I asked questions. I needed to know context, and I would be very, very literal. So if somebody said stay there, I would stay there until somebody said, why aren't you moving? Because you told me to stay here.
Right. Yeah. And then they think that that's like oppositional defiant disorder.
Yep. I was told many times I had issues with authority, and I'm like, but you told me to do X. Now you want me to do Y. You didn't say Simon Says, damn it.
Yeah. Excellent. That's an excellent example. It's,
and by the way, I was good at that game.
Oh, right. Yeah. I bet you were really good at that game. Yeah. It's really tricky. One thing, if I could describe autism, which also is, often co-occurring, with ADHD and other mental health diagnoses, is, in one word, misunderstood.
Yeah.
It's misunderstood. It's a complex developmental disability. It's a lifelong disability. And part of the disabling factor is the environment, and an unaccommodating, uneducated, or uninformed or misinformed environment.
Well, and I tell people, if you remove the people from my environment, I have superpowers. But the minute you drop too many people around me, I shut down, and it's like, okay, the robot needs to recharge.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It is. Social situations can be, exhausting, and that's something that we teach at IRL Social Skills. Is that, listen, your communication happens in context. All communication is context dependent. Everything depends on everything else. What is the setting? What are the what's the sensory impact of the setting? What is the social impact of the setting? Who are you communicating with? Are these people, that really well, or is this like a networking event where you have to do that, awkward small talk, which people hate, but small talk is big talk. And if you have strategies in your back pocket, then you're like, oh, I can use a skill.
Yeah.
And it's really fun. I was just at a networking event last night, and I love to just observe people using these skills and, or not, and how effective they are. Just, ask a question, ask a follow-up question, answer your own question. Let's face it. Nobody wants to have boring conversations. People want to have cool conversations. I mean, like, this is life here. We don't want to waste our time. And that's like the point. It's like a search party, right? To get onto a common interest that we can talk about that's interesting to both of us.
Yep. And for what it's worth, one of my superpowers is one-to-one networking. You know, you put me in a room with speed networkers doing small talk, and my capacity is about 5 minutes. You put me in a room where I can sit down with somebody and have a deep conversation, I got nothing but time. And, you know, people go, oh, you can't be introverted, you have a podcast. And I'm like, count the other guests on the show.
Yeah.
I can do great one-on-one. And I think that's, you know, one of the superpowers that I've noticed is when you get in the right setting and you have the right environment, we make really good deep talk. We just don't like small talk. I don't want to talk about the weather. You know, it's
no one does, Jeff. No one does. And it is really skillful to, you know, first of all, like, know yourself in that way, to be able to advocate for yourself like that. And to also the flex, if you will, to be like, well, you know, I'm not really good at these skills, like in a large group setting. I don't prefer to be in that setting.
Yep.
However, you know, when I learn skills like the skills that we teach at IRL, I can hang in that setting. It's, you know, it's not easy. It's not easy, and it takes practice, just like with any other skill.
Well, it confuses people, because I would rather be, if I go to a conference, I would rather be the guy on the stage speaking than in the audience listening. And people go, but you're an introvert. And I go, exactly. Who's up on stage with me?
Nobody.
It's the quietest space in the room. And then after the events, you know, when they have those big after hours networking cocktail fests, it's like, but I'll be there outside. I always find a quiet corner, and people will come to me and they're like, why aren't you in there networking? And I'm like, because I'm out here networking.
Yeah, nice.
And, you know, quite frankly, in a loud room, I can't hear you. And I'm not in control of everything that I can hold a drink, hold food, and talk. Something's going to give.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
And, you know, it's funny, because when I was a kid, I spilled a lot, or I dropped things, because when my brain engages, my body goes, nah. So, you know, I had the label clumsy because I would get distracted, and then I'd forget I held things. And so for me, I like the quiet spaces, and, you know, I've had some deep conversations, and, you know, I love the green room because I can talk quietly with other speakers.
Yes. And that's good information. That is good to know about yourself. And, you know, like birds of a feather flock together. You're going to find, you know, people who share a neurotype communicate better with each other. Yeah.
I love that. And I think that's, you know, one of the things I'm teaching my kids, and I think, you know, a lot of people could. I was uniquely built to be the father to my boys, because they're both almost identical to me. And I can pull them aside and go, hey, can I give you some feedback? And they appreciate it. And of course, we speak the same language, but also, you know, I'm teaching other people. My eldest, if he wears a hoodie and the hoodie's up, back away, he's about to explode. And
that's, yeah.
You know, if people poke him, it's like, that's on you. I warned you.
Right.
Now, for the record, I also run interference because I don't want him to be uncomfortable.
Right.
But it's fascinating when neurotypical people see this. Oh, he's being difficult. And I'm like, no, you're being annoying. Let's. Oh, by the way, we make terrible people at parent-teacher interviews, because they were saying my eldest needed to pay more attention. He needed to focus. He needed this, that, and the other thing. And my answer was, maybe you could be less boring. Meeting over, next.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not difficult. It's just, you know, I get a little annoyed when people don't recognize, like, he's top of his class. So why do you care?
Yeah, well, exactly. And, first I just want to say like that what you're doing with your sons, you're giving them direct, explicit instruction in these skills. And I love how you're like, are you open to some feedback? Because it's not critical. It's giving them like, hey, giving them some feedback that they can take or leave.
Yeah.
And that is something that we also teach because parents want to help their kids, right?
Yeah.
They're seeing their child struggle and they're seeing their child be like lonely and excluded, and they're doing it wrong, right?
Yeah.
And wrong meaning they might be applying their social skills to someone with whom they don't match. It's not a fit. And so part of the instruction that we teach is like, look, you're not for everyone. Not everyone's going to like you. Do you like everyone? No, you don't. So
find your people.
Yeah, find your people. And then you still got to use skills, right?
Yeah.
You still do. You can't just put people in a room together. You still have to teach people how to, exchange contact information, even if like it's their handle on Minecraft or something. Yeah. Like you still have to exchange information. You still have to follow up. You still have to reach out. You still have to know, when to back off. Yeah. There's a lot of skills, and really, how do we communicate if we don't commune?
Yeah. And, it's a little pet peeve of mine. I've asked this of many teachers, why aren't we teaching basic, my kids are learning all kinds of random stuff that they'll never use in their life. I guarantee memorizing dates in history has zero value. However, we never stop and teach them basic communication skills. Honestly, self-regulation skills. Like and again, I'm not picking on our community. I'm saying everybody needs to be better at self-regulating. And
totally.
Because if we don't learn to self-regulate, we grow up and we self-medicate, which causes other problems.
Yeah, and pills don't teach skills, right?
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
And bonus for the rhyme. So
yeah. And really, you preaching to the choir right here, because I'm like, listen, social emotional skills are where the rubber hits the road. Yeah. These are these skills. 90% of your day is social skills. Co-regulation, self-regulation. Parents in our program, they are really fascinated when they learn about the nervous system, which is your brain and your body, right? And they learn that our nervous systems are connected. And when parents are like, I've noticed that when I'm regulated, my child is regulated. Yeah. So I need to
rocket science.
It's not, but again, it still needs direct, explicit instruction, because most parents are also neurodivergent. There's a strong genetic component to this. Yeah. And people are, you're here because you're supposed to be here. You're meant to be here.
Yeah. And, if I can now, let's tie this back to business. One of the things I find is there's a lot of, assumptions around communication. And, if we're aware, sometimes the difficult employees are having trouble with regulation, or, and I find this is fascinating, you'll get two opposites in a room together and it's like, you two need to figure it out. And they can't because they don't see the common ground.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think that's where the double empathy problem comes in, right? And the double empathy problem was it was put forth by Dr. Damian Milton, and it's a theory that both neurotypical and neurodivergent people need to build their skills, right? Yeah. So if there's like a clash of neurotypes, both need to learn skills.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's, the other thing, and this is just, again, I observe and I see patterns that most people miss. Mm-hmm. Just in I run mastermind groups, and lately I've been noticing just even clashes in learning style.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'm just, this is my style. I learn by reading and writing. And we had somebody in the class, the group, who is visual only. And he's also on a couple of spectrums. And, it just, I could see him shut down, and then he just, and it was like, whoops, didn't. But I was bulldozing through because it was like, why don't you get this? And he's like, why don't you explain it better? And it was like, okay.
Right.
So luckily, we both know we can be a little difficult. So we said, okay, what happened here? And, it came down to when he was a child, his dad was a reading, writing sort of learner, and he would yell at him for not learning from, he wasn't doing his homework, and he wouldn't sit down and read the textbook. And be like, but there's no pictures. And dad was like, why can't you learn this? Are you stupid? And so he heard all of those things, even though I said, why, I don't understand why you don't get this. But what he heard was the entire childhood rant of, are you stupid or something?
Yeah, no, he wasn't stupid. One thing that is common with autistic people is that they'll have off the charts visual spatial skills. And so that like visual processing center is very strong, and you want to play to the strengths. And
even just something really random and less political than the neurotypical neurodiverse. I love watching introverts and extroverts, because when the introvert is leaning back, the extroverts are leaning in. It's like, no. That is not a cue to move forward. It's a cue to lean back. And
right. Yeah, that's a good observation for sure.
Now, the other one I found fascinating was, a lot of corporate training assumes you're a highly regulated, highly functional individual, and it completely ignores fight, flight, or freeze. And it was like, that was my aha moment, because I love teaching. I love helping people learn. I was like, oh my God, if you're not careful, you can trigger them, and they look like a rational human being, but they're, primitive person running from the saber tooth, and the rational part, that left the building an hour ago.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, I love that you just brought that up, because we really have to, start with the nervous system, right? Which is your brain and your body. And your body wants to survive. Yeah. That's all it wants to do, is survive. And so recognizing and naming what is happening in the nervous system in terms of those trauma responses, fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, capitulation, is really important to name those. And then what strategies can I use to put myself into, deactivation, right? Into a state of stasis, if you will. Mm-hmm.
And I don't know about your experience, but in mine, as being neurodiverse, I learned very early in life to read other people's states, because I knew when I was about to be in trouble.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Kind of like a hypervigilance.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, it's fascinating, because for most of my life, I just assumed everybody did that. Mm-hmm. And I was like, why aren't they reacting? Like, I'm giving you some clear signs. It's like when a dog growls, back away. Yeah. But they're still coming. And it's like, how come they don't speak this? But what I realized is a lot of neurotypical people just assume that you're like them, and they ignore the warning signs. And it's funny, because my eldest, when he starts doing this, back away. When the hood comes up, get out of the room.
Right. Yeah.
And, it's funny, because I was raised in the 70s, and, when you started, quote, acting up, you got punished. And it was like, but for the record, my favorite thing to do was when I got punished, I'd get sent to a corner, and I'd be told to sit there until I was ready to apologize. I got a day of peace, because there was no way I was apologizing.
Yeah, because you weren't sorry.
Yeah, it's like, but I wasn't acting up. You interrupted me and you got mad at me for not doing whatever it was you wanted to do at the time. And that's another thing I would say, and I'd love your opinion on it. Certain things we learned with our kids, you don't just take away the toy and say, okay, we're going to visit somebody. You give them that 5-minute warning, 3-minute warning. That's all we need is a little bit of time to change gears. Because if you abruptly change gears for us, we will trigger.
Yeah. And what you're talking about is transitions.
Yeah.
And the transitions are the hardest part of life. I mean, even something as simple as like going from sit to stand,
Yep.
you know, that's a transition.
Yep.
And, you know, and it is hard because like, oh, okay, we have to do something different. We have to change our state. And some advanced warning is really helpful. You know, like visual timers come in handy for that. You know, because it's not just like a person saying 5 minutes, 3 minutes. It's like, oh, they can look, they can see that, okay, that's how much time I have left. And then it gives me that space to transition, you know, more effectively. And really, you know, being effective is doing what works.
Yeah.
So we want to do what works. And, you know, if we have a neurodivergent child, a neurodivergent employee, a neurodivergent friend, we are going to want to do what works so that we can have a good relationship.
Yeah. And, you know, it's funny because my son has a digital watch. And if I say we're going to leave at 9:45 and I come to him at 9:42, he taps the watch, goes, and it's like, okay, I'll come back in 3.
Yeah. Yeah. And, good for him.
You know, it's funny because I just realized recently that this is one of the things that comes with autism, and as it's called, you know, in polite circles, resting thinking face. In less polite circles, it's resting bitch face.
Right.
And I used to get talked to by HR all the time because people are troubled by the look on your face, and I'm like, what now? And I just realized that that's me off in the universe doing whatever I'm doing, and it's my confused, what the hell did you bring me back to Earth for look? And but I get talked to, and you know, I actually got to go to sensitivity training once, and I'm like, I feel like somebody else needs to be here, not me.
Yeah.
But it's, you know, a lot of what we do is misconstrued as, you know, bad social skills. And you know, it's now I learned to tell people, you know, if you interrupt me, just warning, you're going to be terrified by the look on my face. It's not you.
Oh, yeah. See, that's just a little communication goes a long way, right?
Because I've had many people in my life, they interrupt me and then they back away slowly and they apologize. And I'm like, what are you talking about?
Right.
I'm like, well, you look angry. No, I'm just deep in thought. But it's a running joke in the house that we're going to get hats that, you know, say thinking, and, you know, because when I'm deep in thought, it's like, don't bug me. I don't care what's for dinner. I care about whatever, you know, I'm off in the universe solving some big problem. Let me be for at least an hour, and, you know, I'll come back and I'll be civil in an hour. But, you know, it's communication goes a long way.
It does. And, you know, sometimes the burden is on the person who's in the neuro minority.
Yeah.
You know, because the neuro majority, I mean, majority rules sometimes.
Unfortunately, yes. And, you know, the reality is I've learned it's easier to figure out the world than to try and expect the world to tailor to me. Now, for me personally, one of my coping mechanisms is wherever possible, I've screened out interactions with neurotypicals. And a lot of people criticize me for that. And I'm like, but this is how I'm happy. And I work 100% online, so I can really be specific. I don't need to, you know, I don't need to go to Walmart and fit in with the people there because they drive me nuts. So delivery.
Yeah. Yeah. Folks under the like fat part of the bell curve, right?
Yeah.
You know, that's where the majority of people land. And if you are neurodivergent, you are there under you're an outlier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny. I love music, and my wife's like, "Oh, we should go to the symphony," and I'm like, "Or we can buy the CD and listen to it at home." You know,
Nice. On a really good sound system.
yeah. Because
Mhm.
why would I want to be surrounded by other people listening to the same music? Because somebody's going to annoy me. Somebody's going to drop something. You know, it's jarring to me. Whereas, you know, we watch it at home with a good sound system, and you know, we can watch video with it.
Yeah.
I love watching John Williamson when he's conducting. He's clearly one of us.
Yes. Oh yeah.
And, you know, he's not where you think he is when he's conducting. You can tell he is wherever his world of music takes him. And I love just watching him. And then he kind of comes back and, oh, you're here.
Yeah.
Why is everybody staring? What are you clapping at?
Well, you know, it's funny that you mentioned that because a lot of musicians are neurodivergent.
Yeah.
I mean, 80% of autistic people have perfect pitch. And you're gonna, you know, I mean, it's, if you think about, you know, if you play music and you're in a band or you're in an orchestra, like there is like, you know, there's rules.
Yeah.
Right? There's a set of circumstances that everyone has to follow.
Yeah. Unless you're playing jazz. But even jazz has rules.
Even jazz, yeah. Even jazz has there's sets, you know, like there's like in jazz, you know, if you're trading fours, that means you're like soloing for, you know, 4 bars and the other person solos. It's like there's rules. It's rule bound.
Yeah.
And rules help us.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you know, it's funny. I have a friend who's neurodiverse, and she sings, and she tastes music.
Yeah.
So literally, if somebody hits a wrong note, she says that's a sour note. And I was like, oh man, I would love to see the inside of your brain. Like, it just, I'm fascinated by unusual people.
Yes.
I also know somebody who tastes colors. And I'm like, that's a little hard to explain. Yeah. So I live, it's kind of fascinating to me, but I have aphantasia, which means I see words in my head. I don't see pictures. And for years I would go to like Tony Robbins events, and he'd really annoy me because he'd do this visualization where you had to visualize a lemon and, you know, visualize cutting it and tasting it. And everybody's like, and I'm like, I don't get it.
Yeah.
Because I literally, it's funny, but I see the word lemon, not the thing, but the word. And mine, it's a black chalkboard with black writing. And people are like, how do you know it's there? And I'm like, I just do. But I see literally the word lemon, and then I see the word cut, and then I see the word taste. And it doesn't have the same, I don't cringe when I imagine it, because it's all words.
Just words.
But I thought everybody thought and reacted that way, and it just baffled me. But my youngest, he can close his eyes and he can recall every sense from an event, and you know, he sees it in 3D surround sound.
Fantastic.
And it was like, oh my God, describe that. And you know, it's just fascinating. And this is the thing I want to stress for anybody else, is he's so much like me, and yet so different. And I don't know how to visualize this, but it's like, you know, we're all on at least 1 or 2 infinite spectrums. And then it just depends on how our spectrums overlap. And then there's an intersection point between my spectrums and his spectrums. And it's like, we can relate to each other, but I will never fully understand each other.
No, wasn't it Jim Morrison who said we are all in separate universes, eternally alone? Yeah.
And, you know, a friend of mine likes to say we all live in a simulation, and the mistake we make is thinking we're all in the same simulation.
Yeah, that's like, and that's kind of it seems so simple, but it is really kind of mind-blowing to be like, yeah, people like things, different people like different things. Not everyone likes this. Do you like what I like? You know? Yeah, maybe not.
You know, it's funny. I was raised Roman Catholic as a kid, and one of the things everybody said, heaven's up in the sky, and I'd always be looking. And then when my grandmother passed, she was deeply afraid of heights. And they're like, oh, she's up in heaven. And I'm like, well, wouldn't that be her hell? And
Right.
it got to be a very deep discussion until somebody said, shut up. And I was like, but if she's up high, she's in hell. But if she's down low, she's in heaven. And they're like, no, that's not the way it works. And I'm like, okay.
Wow.
So now I could talk to you all day because we're going to have some fun here. But let's talk about what IRL looks like and how somebody could come to you and work with you. Are you online? Are you in local? What do you do and how can people find you?
Yeah, we're online. We teach the skills of reciprocal conversation, finding and accepting source of friends based on your interests. How to enter, how to start individual conversations, how to enter group conversations, how to know if people want to talk to you. Are they looking at you? Are they talking to you? Are they facing you? Or are they giving me the cold shoulder? Like, this is hard to determine sometimes, but it's really important for anyone of any neurotype to be aware of in their communication with others. How to have successful get-togethers, like how to initiate, right? How to handle disagreements, like critical social skill.
Not flipping is a good start.
Yeah, how to repair ruptures.
Yeah.
We teach dating etiquette. That's like a whole morass. And then how to handle bullying, both direct bullying and indirect bullying, which is that shunning, exclusion, ostracization. Yeah. And it's really, these are really important skills. I mean, in Oregon, we are 51st in the nation for adolescent mental health. Wow. So that's including Puerto Rico.
Yeah. So you're right at the bottom. Sorry.
Yeah, no place to go but up. And it is people tell you by being lonely. They tell you by not having a friend, by not having a best friend, by only having acquaintances, not knowing how they've been rejected. Rejection is so painful because it's literally life-threatening. Yeah. And but humans are profoundly social, regardless of neurotype. I mean, humans do not survive without each other. We don't.
Yeah.
We don't.
Now, it's fascinating because when I look at what you do, my first question is, why isn't everybody required to do this? Because
my question. Yeah, that's my question.
No offense to neurotypicals, you're a lot of work.
For sure. Well, no, I mean, neurotypicals also the last time we got any social skills instruction was kindergarten. Like share your toys, don't hit. Yep. Right. And we get older, the social demands of life increase, but services decrease. Yeah. And people, it's just skills on skills, I mean, you're in first it's sharing toys, then it's like being able to have conversations, then it's being able to shift your communication skills based on the context. Yeah. And then you're in the workplace. Yeah. And those are different skills. Yeah. And it's really lifelong learning.
Well, and if I may, from our perspective, we're working hard. It may not look like it.
For sure.
But we're working twice as hard as anybody in a room because we're trying to figure out, why are we annoying people? Why did we do this? Why did that happen? And
yeah. And sometimes the answers really are, because of ableism, because of thin sliced judgments. Yeah. Yeah. Because of the misunderstanding that comes, in a clash of neurotypes.
Yeah. That feels like a movie, the clash of the neurotypes.
Good one.
Okay, I would go see that, but I'm weird, so that's good. Now, this is amazing. So do you just work with kids or do you work with adults?
Yeah, teens age 11 and up.
Okay.
As well as adults. Yeah, we were working with just teens and young adults and their parents. It's a parent mediated intervention because parents want to help their kids, right?
Yeah.
And they might not know how. But we started getting a lot of calls from older adults being like, hey, I'm not very good at these skills. I want to learn these skills. So we wrote a program for adults, and it's very popular.
Sorry, I'm laughing because I know a few people, and me included. It's we've figured out as much as we can on our own, and I think that's one of the things I've discovered with people who are neurodiverse. We try to do a lot on our own, and we think we're alone, when really, and this is the whole point of the podcast, we can bring people together who can be seen and heard and understood exactly as they are.
Exactly.
And I will point out that you are on LinkedIn, so people can catch you there. Is there anything I should have asked you that I haven't yet?
Well, I mean, something that I like to say about social skills is that they are a matter of national security. So you have people who have been, shunned, excluded. They have not had the practice of being in relationship. They are, online. They are getting sucked into QAnon rabbit holes.
Yeah.
The lure of neo-Nazi white supremacist groups, because, they're socially gullible and we need to belong, right?
Yeah.
We need to belong. And people are going to find a way to belong. And so teaching these skills is really a matter of national security.
You just gave me the image that I suspect a lot of cults are people like us trying to find family. Oh, that's going to make me cry. So on that note, it was an absolute pleasure. You will be back. I promise there's more we can cover, but thank you for being on the show, Mara.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jeff.